going to mask that. The handheld mic is on. I'm gonna put it at the podium and just pass my, I'm gonna go get them.
Hello.
We're on? Good evening, and welcome to All Saints Episcopal Church here in Bayside, where we are using our brand new sound system for the first time, so bear with us if we have a little bit of technical difficulty. We're getting a little bit of echo down here on the floor. But I want to say welcome to everyone who is here gathered in this space, and all of you who may be gathered at home on Zoom. Thank you for being here. If you would like to participate in the question and answer time and you are watching us online, you need to log into the Zoom to be able to ask questions. Otherwise, if you're in-house, obviously you can ask questions. We'll invite you, when the time comes, to come to the podium in the center of the aisle to ask your question. You are in Bayside's oldest church. We have been here since 1892. We're celebrating 130 years of mission and ministry. And this year we're putting a particular focus on outreach and trying to make sure that the community knows that we are here for them and for you. So this is one of the first parts of that new offering of outreach. why are we here? Why this? Why now? Well, the very title of the event, Now What, is kind of my cry of despair, if you will, after all the mass shootings that have been happening, and particularly the ones in Buffalo and Uvalde. That just was it. I'd had it up to here, and I realized that if we were silent, we are complicit. And so tonight we get to talk from a bunch of different perspectives about this issue of violence, particularly gun violence. And we're hoping that by having an open forum where we can discuss, we will be able to have a little bit better idea of what is going on in the world around us. A couple of ground rules for this evening. First, a little housekeeping. If you need the necessary, it's through that door and follow the hallway around and you will see the signs. If you've got your phones turned on, please turn them off or silence them. And when we get to the question and answer period, we'll invite you to the podium to be able to speak. So that's really it for the opening. But I hope that tonight will be a time that we can be open, that we can be safe in talking about a hot button issue, that we can talk about it in a cool, calm way. Now, one of the new things we're doing at All Saints this year is we're sponsoring a yoga class. And our yoga instructor is in Europe at the moment, poor thing. But she's only 23, so she gets to travel. But I've been asked to do a mindfulness exercise for you as we begin. So, and it'll be a nice way to enter into the evening. So I'm going to ask you just to sit comfortably back in your seat, ideally with your feet, both feet on the floor. And I would like you and close your eyes if you feel like it, and take a nice deep breath in through your nose. Hang on to it momentarily, and then let it out slowly through your mouth. And do that again. And you can feel the tension beginning to ebb away. But feel what's around you. Feel the hardness of the pews. Listen to the sound, the air conditioning humming. Listen to, just to be aware of the sounds and the people around you. Another deep breath in, another deep breath out. I invite you, as you're ready, to open your eyes again to see the beauty of the room where you are. Watch how the light is. The twilight through the stained glass window is changing how they look from the way they may look on a Sunday morning. Just be very present this evening as we begin our discussions. I want to begin by introducing and thanking our first speaker, Bishop Franklin. Bishop William Franklin is the assisting bishop of Long Island, former bishop of Buffalo, New York, and the bishop is going to give us and open us with an invocation.
Let us pray together for our nation, our beloved nation, in the midst of this time of gun violence. Let us pray. O God of mercy and grace, you bring hope in the midst of senseless tragedy. You bring light in the midst of deepest darkness. We confess our need for the risen Christ as we face into the realities of gun violence in our country. We grieve for the loved ones who lose their lives in these shootings. Deliver this our nation, Almighty God, from profound anxiety and anger. Release your Holy Spirit. Yet let your peace direct us to be peacemakers in this season of anguish and sorrow. Sustain us in this time of challenge through Jesus Christ, the King of Peace. Amen.
Amen.
although we are trying to be apolitical this evening, that is to say, we are not going to take any particular political stance, our keynote speaker is an old friend of mine, Senator Chris Coons, who is the senator from Delaware. Chris and I went to high school together, and we've stayed in touch over the years. And he has spent his career working across the aisle to get things done, not just for his constituency in Delaware, but for Americans across the country. Gun violence prevention is one of his priorities. And most recently, Senator Coons served as one of a bipartisan group of 20 senators that negotiated the first significant piece of gun legislation in more than 30 years. Tonight, he will share his insights on how we can ensure that every American has the right to live without fear of gun violence in their communities. Please turn your eyes towards the television as we welcome my friend, Senator Chris Coons.
Good evening to all Saints Bayside and to Father Larry Byrne, who I've known for decades. Thank you for this invitation. To Reverend Marjorie Bowden Edmonds, to the vestry, and to everyone who's attended. Thanks for the chance to gather. Your hearts are open to God, your minds are open to possibilities, and your doors are open to all at All Saints Episcopal Bayside. And in that spirit, you've gathered for this conversation about what next? What can we do to confront gun violence? And I hope to contribute to that conversation tonight. Isaiah 58 teaches, your ancient ruins shall be rebuilt. You shall raise up the foundations of generations. You shall be called the repairer of the breach, the restorer of streets to live in. That message is what inspires all of us to come together and to try and confront gun violence. The desire to restore our streets to being places where children can play without fear of violence. You're guided in this discussion tonight by my friend Father Larry and some experts to address this tough subject. And I know we are all gathered knowing the pain in our hearts and in our communities from gun violence. What I want to stress is that we who are elected know what's happening. We see the violence in our streets and the bloodshed, and know we have to act to find ways to address the challenge, even the horror of gun violence. This issue knows no boundaries, from sprawling cities to tight-knit rural towns, from the aisles of our grocery stores to the desk-filled classrooms of our schools. The presence of gun violence in our communities is a real threat, and for many, a tragic daily reality. In Bayside, 2 recent shootings left a pair of teenagers injured, including a boy shot leaving Cardozo High School. Here in my hometown of Wilmington, a 14-year-old boy and a bank executive just walking home from work both recently lost their lives to stray rounds to gun violence. Nearly 40,000 Americans every year die in gun violence, and the burden of that falls particularly heavily on Black and Hispanic communities. We have to do more at every level of our community, our government, and our nation to better equip law enforcement with the tools they need to confront this threat and manage it head on, to invest in grassroots outreach, in mental health services, in promoting trauma-informed public health services, and respect the foundations of our nation. This is a tough balancing act. We have to remember that at the very founding of this country and our Constitution is enshrined a right of access to firearms for citizens of the United States in our Second Amendment. But I'll tell you that funeral after funeral that I've attended here in my hometown has made it more and more painfully clear. We have to balance respecting that Second Amendment right with providing the same level of respect for human life and minimizing the carnage. Recently, a new conservative majority in the Supreme Court has made critical decisions impacting this issue. They overturned a century-old New York gun control measure that restricted concealed carrying of firearms. And I know that many of us in Congress are concerned about the direction the Supreme Court might take and on how we make progress on this very divisive issue. We passed in June, through significant bipartisan cooperation, hard work, the most significant gun reform bill in decades that also invests billions in community mental health. It strengthens background checks for America's youngest gun buyers. It closes the so-called boyfriend loophole. It incentivizes states to pass red flag laws that will make it easier to take guns out of the hands of those who pose an imminent threat to themselves and others, and invests billions in mental health and community violence intervention programming. I've personally worked with bipartisan groups of senators to introduce and pass legislation, like the Nix Denial Notification Act. And I've introduced Democrat-only bills, like the Preventing and Addressing Trauma and Health Services Act, that has no prospect of passage, but shows the direction I think we should go. Nix Denial Notification is a bill I worked on with Senators Toomey and Cornyn to make sure that those who are prohibited from getting a weapon, if they go into a gun store and lie on their background check and try to get a gun, local law enforcement is notified. The other bill I referenced would increase access to crucial mental health resources. President Biden has a long record of working to address the issues of gun violence for decades. And more recently as president, he's called for $32 billion in additional investments to this coming year's budget to strengthen police, to strengthen the background check system, to strengthen community violence interruption, and to help fund community resilience. He's also enacted more than 24 executive orders to try and work to reduce gun violence. There is so much more we can and must do at the community level, at the city and state level, and at the federal level. And as I mentioned, we have to balance our respect for the Second Amendment while making our nation and community safer. We can get closer to that reality when leaders like Father Larry and folks such as yourselves make your voices heard. So let me urge you to get engaged, to be engaged at the local and the federal level, to make sure that every time there is another senseless gun tragedy, we understand the sense of urgency that you feel, and we keep working together. I believe we've made real progress this year, but we are a long way from making the difference that this moment demands and that our communities deserve. So I hope you will have a respectful, vigorous, and robust conversation tonight where you'll talk through the many causes of gun violence, whether it's their contributions to suicide, to accidental death through a lack of gun safety, or the instances, tragically, where guns are used to kill others. We have to balance that with the realization that for millions of Americans, guns are an important part of a sporting life or of protecting their families and their homes. And in this conversation you're going to have this evening, I hope you'll follow up by working through Father Larry to get to me the conclusions you reach so that I can work with your congressional delegation, with our president, and with others in Congress to try and make a meaningful difference. Thank you for your attention and engagement tonight, and I hope you have a great conversation.
Okay. I want to thank my friend Senator Coons for his wonderful words. I think he sets a good tone for the evening. And Stephanie, I have brought the wrong set of notes with me. I think you've got the other ones, if you wouldn't mind. But I didn't put the updated notes in my notebook. I don't usually work off of notes, so I'm not used to it. One of the common threads about this evening is that we have invited people who are very, very busy. Senator Coons was not able to be here via Zoom. Thank you so much. So he did send so I want to thank him, and I want to thank his team for sending us that video. Tonight we also have with us, we have Captain John Portolin, commanding officer of the Portolatin. I probably pronounced it wrong, I'm sorry. Commanding officer of the 111th Precinct of the NYPD, and Officer Luigi Galano, our community affairs officer. They're with us this evening, and we're honored to have you here. The captain has squeezed us into an already overbooked evening, so he's going to say a few words, and then he's going to have to dash. But Officer Galano will be here, we hope, for the question and answer period. So, Captain, please.
Hi, good afternoon, everyone. Thank you. John Portolatin, Commanding Officer, 111 Precinct. It's an honor to be here. And I cleared my schedule out for a little bit, so I'll be here for the duration unless something major comes over. Oh, but I will be here to answer any questions, anything you have throughout the whole process today. Thank you.
So I've already given a bit of an introduction to our first speaker, Bishop William Franklin. Bishop Franklin was at All Saints in April, so it's always good to have you back. Previously, as I mentioned, he served as the Bishop of the Diocese of Western New York, which encompasses Buffalo, and Bishop Franklin is one of more than 100 Episcopal bishops across the U.S. to form the group Bishops United Against Gun Violence, which works to control the epidemic of gun violence in our country. Bishop Franklin, please.
Well, it's a great honor to be with you on this occasion. I'm just so happy to be here. I love coming to this parish, and I was happy to be here in April. And it's great to have other members of other religious bodies, other denominations, other religious faiths here tonight. The Episcopal Church welcomes everybody, and we welcome you here tonight and to this space where we can have an honest conversation about a major issue. The name of our church is the Episcopal Church, and that's because we have bishops, and bishops are sort of our governors of our church. And every 10 to 12 years, all of the bishops in the world, believe it or not, gather in Canterbury, which is our mother church in England, a great cathedral, for 2 weeks. And so I'm just back from that 2-week gathering. But on the very last day of the gathering, the heads of each national church goes to the microphone, just like this, and asks all of the bishops to pray for something about their country. And our presiding bishop, Michael Curry, who is actually from Buffalo, grew up two blocks from the shooting in Buffalo when he was a little boy. He went to the microphone and asked all the bishops in the world to put at the heart of their prayers the question of violence in America. He said, this is the most important issue we have facing our beloved country. And he asked everybody, and everybody joined in. All 700 bishops stood in rows and prayed. And boy, did we disagree on a lot of things, but nobody disagreed on this. Gun violence for me is not just a matter of 700 bishops voting and praying. It's a deeply personal, individual issue for me. Those who are in the congregation and the clergy, remember when I was here in April, I told you the story of what happened in my hometown. I grew up in Mississippi in a time of absolute complete segregation when I was a boy of 5 in Brookhaven, Mississippi. On election day in 1956, an African-American man went to the courthouse to exercise his right as a citizen of the United States, and he was shot dead by gunmen as he went up to cast his vote. And he was never arrested. No one was ever charged. He went completely free. And as a little boy, this fundamentally changed my attitude. I'm sorry to say, toward my state where I was born. I realized how strong white supremacy was in my state and how the culture of my state really wasn't a democratic culture at all. So I saw that already as a boy. And I thought, I got to get out of here pretty fast. So I'm sorry to say, I came north. I love the north. I've gone back some, but it was part of my life. I became the bishop in Buffalo, and what happened? Fast forward 66 years after that event, what happened in May? In the Tops grocery store in Buffalo, which was 4 blocks from where I lived, 2 blocks from where our presiding bishop grew up in his church, 10 African-American people were killed in that store, as you know, by a man who drove there because he said this was the highest concentration of black people close to where he lived. And he went there on purpose to do this. And you know what a shattering event that was for that city. And for our St. Philip's Church, nobody from St. Philip's was killed, our historic black church in Buffalo. But they knew many of the people in that store. And that store was the only store, grocery store, believe it or not, in that section of Buffalo, where people would walk because they didn't have cars to shop. Now that's been closed. So there is a hole in the life of that city, in the heart of that city because of this. And that's been deeply personal to me, this question of gun violence. One last thing I want to say about this. This is not a new issue. This is not a new issue in the sense that, remember in 1901 in Buffalo, an anarchist shot and killed the President of the United States, just about a mile from where this supermarket is. So we have been living with this Abraham Lincoln was killed by gun violence. You want me to just go through the list? We can talk about it, how this has been part of us. But tonight, we are sharing partly what are we as those who are Christians and what are Episcopalians doing about this, to share just what our church is trying to do about this. I'm a member, as Father said, of a group called Episcopal Bishops Against Gun Violence. And what we've tried to do as this group is to bring public attention to this issue by bishops getting all dressed up and going out and protesting when there's violence. Guess what? When we had our national convention this summer in July, one morning a man was killed via gun violence right out of the door of the place where we were meeting. So the next day, all the bishops got dressed up again and we went out and we protested and we said we've got to do something about this. But as you heard from this great speech we just heard, we've got to do more than just march. We have got to think about a way, still honoring our Second Amendment, that we are able to control this gun violence. No other nation at the meeting of bishops I went to has anything like this. Countries have violence, countries have war, but nobody has this pattern of going into schools and killing people, going into supermarkets and killing it, going into churches and killing people. This is something we just have to bear as a people and say we have to work against this mark against us. We, as bishops in this movement, believe that this is a Christian moral imperative, that our faith makes us want to deal with this issue. We should not avoid this issue. And what are some of the reasons for that? As Christians, we believe in a God of life in the face of death, who calls our churches to speak and act. Number two, as Christians, we have a moral obligation to stand against gun violence. It is not about good gun versus bad gun, good guy versus bad guy. It is the manifestation of racial violence, as in Buffalo, where a shooter drove hundreds of miles to do this, or an antipathy to children and killing children in schools. It is a terror, number three, directed at our children in schools. Number four, it is an attack on Christian people of faith, Jewish people of faith, Muslim people of faith. We can fill in a blank. Every religious group is having an example of this, killing people in their place of worship. Tonight, we yearn for a balm. That's a Christian term we use, balm of Gilead. Something that will allow us to get over this sickness as a people. To get over this sickness, to acknowledge it, to face it, and as people of faith to stand. And it's not a political decision. It's something I think that's across the lines of party and that could unite our people. Tonight, we ask for our legislators like Coons to be people of courage who will pass laws to stem this violence. May our conversation tonight be a first step in this neighborhood of Bayside toward helping us to choose life, to seek wisdom, to reject the raging culture of revenge and fear, and to guide our feet into the way of peace. Let us pray for peace. Let us work for peace. Let us make these next months in which we move from division to holy peace. Thank you.
Thank you. In some of our promotional materials, you may have noticed that we had invited City Council member Linda Lee to be with us this evening, and she had intended to be with us. She has a strong background in mental health. Unfortunately, the life of a politician is a life of putting out fires very often, and she had to cancel at the last minute. But I'm very pleased and very happy that stepping into the breach is our own Deacon Marjorie Boyden Edmonds. And Deacon Marjorie is the director of the chaplaincy program at Hoboken University Medical Center just across the river, and the deacon here at All Saints and in the Flushing Deanery. Deacon Marjorie has a depth of knowledge and experience in helping people through times of struggle and of loss, and we've asked her to give us the chaplain's eye view of the effects of sudden illness and or death. So, Marjorie.
Father, thank you so much. It's good to see all of you here tonight. I told Father, my hospital is a very small hospital in Hoboken. It's almost 160 years old. It's now Care Point. It was the old St. Mary in the beginning. And so we don't have any trauma there, but because we have Jersey Medical Center, where we would send all the trauma victims. But trauma is trauma, and one of the things I know was 2019, we had a lot of trauma from COVID and quick death and 20 people dying in a short while and things like that. Am I running around to comfort the staff and to make sure that they can do what? And all they keep telling me is that, you know, we were never trained for this. And outside, one of the windows was two freezer trucks. And one woman would go out there and she'd stand at the window and look down, and then she'd go to the board and she's an educator, and she'd write the number of death for that day. And I said to her, stop looking through that window because you cannot deal with it. So trauma comes in different ways. And if you can be traumatized by the death through COVID, you can imagine the trauma that comes with being killed by guns, the violence that comes behind it, the imagination of children who have witnessed this, of family members who have lost loved ones. So I gathered some information here so that I could read to you about this trauma. It says here, thank you. Okay, mass shootings are happening almost weekly, instilling fear, hopelessness in individuals and communities. We learn how trauma impacts individual survivors, professionals who care for the victims, and areas left to suffer the impact. Some are taking action to untie and heal, to unite and to heal in their grief. When describing a social problem, people often focus on numbers. Now, many people in the city are experiencing homelessness. Forgive me, my glasses is not my reading glasses. What is the crime rate in the neighborhood? What percentage of population experience poverty? But numbers only tell part of the story. Social problems are complex, and understanding of them cannot be gained through quantitative data alone. Such is the case with gun violence. Every time there's a shooting, particularly a mass shooting, the first piece of information often shared is the number of people killed or wounded. But the trauma caused by gun violence ripples out far and beyond the victims, and the more social workers know about these effects, the better they can respond to this trauma, particularly in communities where gun violence is an everyday occurrence. Gun violence is a way more than a body count, says Sarah Moore, who is a licensed practitioner, a counselor in a private practice in Washington, D.C. It creates a sense of hopelessness. People believe that no one cares about what's happening. Trauma caused by gun violence is so destructive because of its effect not only the victims, but also their friends, their family members, neighborhoods, and communities. Gun violence is systemic trauma in that it permeates and impacts the social and interpersonal systems of those who were killed. The mental health effect of gun violence can include anxiety, depression, PTSD, consider the following. Gun violence survivors interviewed by Francis in 2018 reported increased fear, and some were so fearful that they did not want to leave their homes. Just somewhat like the COVID. When a group of urban adolescent girls assessed at an adolescent medicine clinic, 2/3 of those exposed to violence, including gun violence, met PTSD symptoms criteria. Nearly 1/3 of parents in the Washington, D.C. area surveyed after 2002 Beltway sniper attack said that their children experienced at least one psychological distress symptoms related to the shooting. While secondary trauma is often associated with those closest to gun violence survivors, it affects others, from first responders assisting the scenes of gun violence to healthcare workers who see the horrific damage gun violence causes. Carol said, who is a social worker, said, there are lots of people walking around with undiagnosed and unacknowledged PTSD. Trauma is impact and can be magnified if a person is repeatedly exposed to gun violence. Most often, gun violence survivors are similar to war veterans who must adapt to being exposed to danger and skill at staying safe. In communities where gun violence is common, residents can experience hopelessness and a sense that the violence is just a part of everyday life. There are no outward emotion exhibited, and simply people state it's just a fact of life. It seems to be expected. Some believe violence is always present, and people learn to adapt. In addition, mental health problems can affect a gun violence survivor's physical healing. A study of adults hospitalized for firearm-related injury found that those with pre-existing depression had an increased risk of discharge to care facility or the hospital mortality. Although trauma related to gun violence is usually associated with victims and their social network, there also is trauma related to perpetrators. For example, women who are left to care for children on their own, and the children who can only see a parent by visiting a prison. And when the perpetrators are released back into the community, they return having experienced a trauma of incarceration. Perhaps the most disturbing traumatic effect of gun violence is that it can lead to more violence. Feeling unsafe, expecting to be victimized, and doubting that the police will protect them. People in high violence communities may choose to carry firearms for protection and end up going back to the prison system. A challenge when trying to address the trauma experienced by people exposed to gun violence is that such violence has often become such a regular part of their lives that they don't see the need for mental health service as they feel stigmatized by reaching out for support.
Thank you. That was terrifying on on some level. The idea of where I'm just making a note, the normalization of violence, it's just, it makes me sad. Thank you, though, for your perspective as well. I'm going to direct your attention now to the television again, where we have a video from, and I need to use my notes, I apologize, from the Northwell Health Center for Gun Violence. I did not even know that they had one until we began the work on this program. The director for the Center of Gun Violence Prevention, Dr. Satya, was unable to come. He asked us to share this brief video with you. It's about how and why the medical community is treating gun violence as a public health concern. Teddy, shall we?
One's wearing a cap there, last seen walking southbound of Savannah. One's over the handgun. Center rider. Come on, Mike.
Firearm-related injuries and gun violence continue to remain staggeringly high in America, representing one of our nation's chief public health crises. Firearm injury permeates every aspect of our society, including places that we once considered safe havens, churches, schools, and the workplace. And firearm injury happens in many forms, including self-harm, intimate partner violence, unintentional injury, and more.
I see how this impacts the children who are part of a family where somebody has had a firearm injury. I see how it affects the teens who witness firearm injury events. I see how it impacts the parents of children who are injured by firearms. I see how it impacts the community. I see how it impacts the team members that I serve with to care for patients. So this is really, really important to me because I feel if we do something about this, if we work together to address firearm injury, then we can better help our communities and, of course, our country.
Our clinical team members routinely offer patients opportunities to discuss lifestyle choices and health behaviors which may affect their safety and overall well-being. Diet, exercise, substance use, fall risk, and many other behaviors are discussed by patients and the healthcare team as part of usual care. However, the opportunity to discuss firearm injury risk and the potential for harm to our patients and their families has not been part of our clinical repertoire, despite being a known public health crisis.
Well, if the spike in gun violence during the COVID-19 pandemic has taught us anything, we know that New York is far from spared from this national epidemic. We are seeing gun violence spikes throughout the state, and especially in New York City. And even before the pandemic, roughly 20% of New York households actually have a firearm within them.
In order to have conversations about firearm injury prevention with our patients, we must first educate ourselves. We can learn the basics about firearms, risks associated with access, safe firearm practices, and harm reduction strategies for violence reduction in order to be comfortable in having knowledgeable conversations that result in realistic, patient-driven safety plans to reduce the risk of gun injury.
I would want my Northwell colleagues to know that this is very much a personal thing that each of us can get involved in. This isn't a political thing. This isn't about the Second Amendment. This is about your child, your siblings, your parents. Each of us are affected by gun violence.
We know that there are firearms in homes and that there's risk there. So we have this opportunity to our public and to our community to speak to it at other visits where it could be important and to help save lives and injuries from the community we serve.
So if folks are willing to join this journey, we can make a difference with everybody. Every single patient universally asking about access as well as violence risk so that we can prevent future events or potentially even create safer environments for not only my children, but our families and our communities at large.
As healthcare professionals, we have the power to create opportunities for our patients to discuss all aspects of their health and safety. They look to us for information. Our call to action is to each take a moment to reflect on the role we play in our patients' lives and identify where we can offer opportunities to discuss firearm injury risk and other difficult topics that affect their health and our communities.
"30 years ago, when I was first-year seminarian, we went into New Testament class, and Dr. Hall said, "Learn to love the questions." And everybody went, "Ugh." But we did, some of us did learn to love the questions. And these questions, we're allowed as individuals, as thinking people, we're allowed to ask these questions. We don't have to be judged. We can just be questioners. We can be seekers on the way, and that's all a welcome thing. We're going to have another video in a moment, but as part of our mindfulness, I don't know about you, but I could sure stand up for a minute or two. Yeah. So we're going to take a 7th inning stretch here. These stools are very hard. Yeah. And those pews aren't very comfortable either. But while we're standing, I will, because we're running long, let me introduce the next video. And you may say, well, why are you having so many videos? And why did you do this in August? Instead of in September when people aren't on vacation. We did it very intentionally now because school starts again very soon, and we wanted to get this conversation going before the beginning of the school year. So our next video is from Michelle Guglielmelli. Oh boy, I hope she pronounces her name for us. We're going to keep our attention on the television, and Michelle is from Moms Demand Action, a grassroots movement of Americans fighting for public safety measures to protect people from gun violence. And this includes passing stronger gun laws, but also encouraging responsible gun ownership. So please turn your attention to the television as we sit back down and find our next speaker. Would you like to put that down? Put that.
It takes seatbelts, and it takes airbags, and it takes people taking driver's tests and getting their permits. And so that's why gun violence legislation is very complicated in such we need both our state legislation and also our federal legislation. So I'll just take a brief summary of what we've accomplished this last few months. So due to the shootings in Buffalo and Uvalde, this definitely came to the forefront. But we all know that gun violence permeates our states every day. But during the months of April and July this year, we were able to get so much done across New York and our federal government. And so I'll just highlight a few of the things that were done on both the state and the federal level, and where we still need to be able to make inroads as such. So, things move a little slower at the federal level, but at the state, we're able to get things done a little quicker. So when people say over the years, gosh, nothing's been done so far, that's actually not true. We have made a lot of progress in this area. So for New York State, we've gone ahead and banned the purchase of semi-automatic rifles by anyone under the age of 21. We've expanded the list of people who can file extreme risk protection orders and requires law enforcement to file ERPOs under specified set of circumstances. And for those of you who are not familiar with an ERPO, that's a red flag law, which basically means I have a suspicion about someone. They've exhibited certain behaviors, and I don't think it would be safe for them to have a firearm in their home. You're able then to go to a local judge and have that ERPO put into effect. And so many times when we hear, oh my gosh, we knew that all the time about that person, the red flag laws allow you to take steps ahead of time, so that we're not saying those things after any of our shootings. In New York, we've also created it a crime of making a threat of mass harm or aggravated threat of mass harm. And we've also required enhanced reporting by law enforcement to the state and federal gun databases, and requires gun dealers to enact uniform security and reporting standards. And just to go back to the red flag laws, we had our first stab at a red flag law in New York back in 2019. From 2019 until now, about 1,400 risk protection orders were put in place. Since Buffalo to the present, New York has filed 832. So it really does show that this work, although it can take a long time and be tedious, it does pay off in the end. And on the federal level, as Senator Coons said earlier today, this is the first gun safety bill that's been passed in 30 years. And you wouldn't think that anything would have been passed, honestly, as little as a year ago. But there's things that we would love to still be in that federal law, but we have to appreciate the steps that it has taken. And there's things like an enhanced background check process. There's funding for people that are in needs of intervention. It expands the current prohibition of anybody connected with domestic abuse. And that's a huge thing, because there were so many women who were victims of domestic abuse by those people who were not their actual husband. And if they weren't their spouse, there was really nothing that could be done. And now this helps expand it. As I said, does it have everything? It doesn't. We'd still like to see something in here regarding semi-automatic weapons, of the ammunition that goes along with that. And one thing that is also important to New Yorkers especially is doing something about the trafficking of guns from one state to another. So while we may have very strong gun laws here in New York, if our neighbors don't have those laws either, or prohibit that gun trafficking, it affects us. And as recently as the end of last year, when we lost officers Moore and Rivera, that gun came from Georgia. It was not here from New York. and yet that gun made its way up here. So there's a lot to be done still on the legislation level, but we've made a lot of strides. And you can say to yourself, well, how can I help do that? I think one of the things that absolutely got the federal law passed is the outreach to people's elected officials. Phones were flooded, and that's a very easy thing that you can do. It's making a phone call to your senator and to your congressman, and that is absolutely, I know, the pressure that the senators felt, especially in a bipartisan effort to get that gun bill passed. We have a program called Gun Sense Candidates. This is not directed at Democrats or Republicans. You fill out a questionnaire. Do you believe in gun safety measures? As an example, I remember the first politician to ever fill it out on our behalf was Peter King, who was absolutely a Republican from Long Island. So we look to work with those politicians who will work with us to install gun safety measures. We're not a gun control movement. We're looking for safer streets. So, if there's questions that you have afterwards, I will be here to answer them. And there's so much work other than legislation that we do. We do work, as I said, in our communities with our survivor groups. I think you can make a difference simply by showing up at town halls such as these and town halls that your local officials are having. So there's some great victories that we've had. We've still got a lot of work to be done ahead. And you can make a difference by simply picking up the phone. So I'm eager to learn some more from our other speakers tonight. And thank you again for having me.
Realize you were with us on Zoom, but it's great to be able to virtually be with you. Our next speaker is live and in person this evening. It's a face that you may recognize from around here. He turns up every once in a while. You may recognize him from live with Kelly and Ryan, or if you're been around a while, live with Kelly and with Regis and Kathy Lee even, or on any number of other television programs. The toy guy, Chris Byrne, who happens to be my older brother, and is also a nationally known and recognized expert and author about play and culture, and has an extensive knowledge of toys, education, child development, and he's going to talk to us about some of the cultural aspects of play and all of this. So, Chris, please.
Thank you. I always love saying my brother, the father. I always enjoy doing that. It's really, I'm a little bit of the anomaly here tonight, but I'm so happy to be here, and this has been so incredibly moving. It is really interesting when something like Uvalde happens, or the shooting in Buffalo, or any of the mass shootings that we've heard, is people want to jump on blaming the toy industry, or they want to blame video games, or they want to blame all of those things for violence. And this may sound a little controversial, but there's no reliable research that shows that kind of kids engaging in that kind of play makes them violent. However, because you can't control for that. You can't have that be the only influence on them. But I will say this, that some of the video games, some of the intense video games do desensitize kids to violence. And that's really the problem for me. I grew up playing, cops and robbers. And all of that stuff, and what that is for a child, especially boys, and there's a lot of writing on this. It's power and conflict. It's how do I assert power? How do I begin to assert power over my world and take on that power for myself? Because when your life is eat your peas, get in the minivan, do your homework, suddenly you're powerful. You're a superhero, or you've got a gun or something, and that's vicarious. But the most important thing that happens then is the context in which that exists, is that the parents and the family and the culture creates a context around it. I always say, it's okay to play Power Rangers, all the karate, but not with grandma. It's really the whole idea of being able to know what's appropriate in the culture and educating kids. And, I played with plenty of toy guns. I've touched one gun, real gun, a hunting gun in my life, and I was like, okay, yeah, you got me touching it, goodbye. It's not my thing. But I do think that blaming the toy industry or blaming guns for behavior is an easy answer. And culturally, we need to do a couple of things. First, we need to understand how kids are playing and what they're expressing when they are playing power and conflict and they're going bang bang or they're doing all of that stuff. Because around 7 or 8, children begin to understand that they're going to die. And not a happy time, but they haven't known that before. So they begin to understand that. And then they get to play with that vicariously. Bang bang, you're dead. Okay, now I'm up again. And those are it's like classic literature in which kids have a vicarious experience and they are actually building the synaptic connections in their brain that when they have to confront those issues, even in fantasy, they have built an experience with that. So it's an important part of development. What needs to happen after that important part of development is that children are given a context for what's appropriate behavior. What is appropriate? Where are we? And in a larger sense, when you see kids with real guns, it's because in many cases they are out of hope. So what can we do as a community? Give children a chance to hope, that validate them, that they are not isolated, that they can express themselves in other ways, that we can support them, and that we're there for them. And I have certainly seen, especially with teenagers, a growth of suicide and self-harm, as we saw in that video. And it's because kids are not seeing possibility. So it's one thing to have all that play, run around, be the powerful person. We loved secret agents. Secret agents was my thing. Be the secret agent, and suddenly you're powerful. But then once that gets out of the realm of fantasy and into the real world, away from play, we really need to find ways to give kids hope, acknowledgement, and inclusion in the culture so that they understand that they are taking on an important role in the culture and that they can do it, and that there is a support system out there for them. Because so often what happens is kids get that hopelessness because they don't feel supported and they don't know what to do. So it's a slippery slope because it's so easy to blame toys, it's so easy to blame things, but the answer is much more complex and complicated and harder. So from a toy standpoint, we do have changed the language. You don't have Nerf guns anymore, you have Nerf blasters, which I guess makes it a little easier. For about 40 years now, any toy gun has had to have an orange tip on it, so that it could never, in an intense situation, be mistaken for something. And those are distinctly American things. When I go to the toy fairs in Asia or I'm in other countries, you see toy guns that look like real replica guns. It's very different, and they don't have the same level of gun violence that we do. So it's a cultural issue. It's not a toy issue. It's a cultural issue. And the question is, what can we do in the culture to create that sense of possibility and empowerment and let kids, that power and conflict that they've played with and developed, how can they use that productively? So.
Thank you. Yeah, it's really macro rather than micro when it comes to the environment, and it's about families, as so many things are, about families being engaged. And we talk about our All Saints family. This is a kind of an old-fashioned parish where, I think of the kids as my kids. We all do, and we're kind of in that takes a village mindset here, and I think it actually is helpful to know that we're all connected, and as Baysiders or as people in New York or as Americans, we are all connected. We may be in a time when the fabric is stretched to the breaking point, but we're still all one human family. So thanks, Chris. I appreciate your being here tonight. And Officer Galano is the thank you, the Community Affairs. It's getting past my bedtime. The Community Affairs officer from the 111th Precinct. You often see the wrong end of all of this. What would you like to share with us this evening?
I like, with gun violence, I think it's a complicated solution to try to reduce that problem, to get the gun violence down. I don't think it's a single thing, and it's not a finger-pointing thing. I think I don't think it's a very simple solution. I think it's a multiple combination of different things. It's getting to our youth, getting them into different programs and stuff like that, and getting them off the streets and getting them into doing positive things to help our community. And that's, a perfect example of what we're doing here, right here in the 111 precinct as well, too, and throughout the department. Captain Portalatin's going to actually go in further detail about it and talk about it.
Thank you.
Yes.
So basically, guys, we have something called the Yco Program, which is the Youth Coordinating Officers in the 111 precinct. Every precinct has this. So these officers, I have two officers, Officer Mike Sillis and Officer Kristen Kirby. Their job is to go and engage the youth. When I say engage, I'm not telling them to go toss them against the wall, yell at them, anything like that, but simply just go up to them and say, hey, what's up, guys? How's your day going? Just that open dialogue. When I was growing up, when we saw an officer, we just gave them the respect. They rarely talked to us because they were busy answering jobs, keeping the streets safe. But these officers, they take time out of a busy day. Their time on the job is to dedicate to our youth, to the future of our generation, to the future of us. And they speak to them. And since we started this program a couple of years ago, it has been so helpful to the kids. You see them come into the precinct. They know the officers' names. They say hi to the officers. The officers know the kids, the neighborhood kids. We teach them. This past Monday, we had a mechanic owner come in there and teach the kids how to change a flat tire. I never had that when I was 15 years old. But these kids 12, 13, 14 years old, are learning something new. More importantly, they're off the streets. All right, they're not on the streets and not being exposed to drugs or the gangs or anything like that. And knock on wood, the 111 precinct doesn't have any type of gangs in its precinct. But overall, throughout the city, a lot of kids are exposed to that. And every precinct is doing their own thing. We have a couple of precincts in the Bronx and in Brooklyn. They're teaching kids how to cut hair. They bring them to the barber shops. They're showing them a trade, teaching them things. And this is very good just to get the youth off the streets and let them know that the officers are not bad people. We're people just like you, and we want to help you and teach you. So this is something that I'm taking very pride in. It's very good success here on the 111, and I was doing really well. Thank you.
That's great to know. I was somewhat unaware, actually very unaware of some of the programs that are going on. So I think getting that information out there is a big help. We worry about things in this neighborhood. There's a lot of catalytic converters being stolen. There are wheels being stolen off cars, but I don't think that's kids doing that. And so there's always going to be crime, but addressing it before it gets to that point is so important. So thank you for the work that you're doing there, that we're perhaps stopping them from making those choices that are really bad choices. So we have one more video for you, and that is from Sandy Hook Promise. Following the video, we'll talk briefly about 2 education programs they provide for free through their website, but let's go to the video for Sandy Hook Promise.
I promise to do all I can to protect children from gun violence by supporting and encouraging solutions that create safer and healthier homes, schools, and communities.
Our hearts are broken, our spirit is not, and it is with this knowledge that we move forward with purpose and strength.
This is a promise to truly honor the lives lost by turning our tragedy into a moment of transformation.
This is a promise to be open to all possibilities.
There is no agenda other than to make our community and our nation a safer, better place.
This is a promise to have the conversations on all the issues. Conversations where listening is just as important as speaking.
Where even those with the most opposing views can debate in goodwill.
This is a promise to turn the conversations into actions.
Things must change. This is the time.
This is a promise we make to our precious children.
Because each child, every human life, is filled with promise.
And though we continue to be filled with unbearable pain, we choose love, belief, and hope instead of anger.
This is a promise.
To do everything in our power to be remembered not as the town filled with grief and victims, but as the place where real change began.
Our hearts are broken. Our spirit is not.
This is our promise.
The Sandy Hook Promise.
I promise.
I promise.
I promise.
I promise.
Yo prometo.
بعودكم.
Join with millions of people who've already made the promise to protect children from gun violence.
When the shooting at Sandy Hook happened, it was just down the road from the parish that I had previously served, which was in Easton, Connecticut. My wife was still teaching at the nursery school in Fairfield, Connecticut, in the Episcopal Church. So this one hit us, it was right at home, and that began. And I gave, the Sunday after that happened, I gave the first and really only overtly political sermon of my life against, speaking out against gun violence. That was a long time ago, and it's still very present. And the recent shootings were what made us go to this evening. It's powerful to Sandy, and we thank Sandy Hook Promise for allowing us to share that. They have a program called Know the Signs, which is created for children and adults and features 2 different learning opportunities. Each teaches how to prevent school violence, shootings, and other harmful acts. Students and educators learn how to identify at-risk behaviors and intervene to get help. And these early prevention measures empower everyone to help keep schools and communities safe. The programs are available for free on the Learning Center on their website, and I encourage everyone to check them out. The website is on the back of your program. There's a whole page of resources there for you. So I want to thank everyone again for speaking, whether you were live, whether you were on videotape, whether you were on Zoom. I guess nobody was actually on videotape. My son will be going, Dad, there's no videotape. So now we have some time, and as I said, we have been encouraged to learn to love the questions and to be able to speak freely. So I would invite those of you who have a question, if anyone has a question, I would invite you to come to the podium in the center of the aisle and speak into the microphone so that we can hear you and the folks at home can hear you. So, yeah, go ahead, Melissa, please. But please come to the podium. Otherwise, we won't be able to hear you, and the folks at home won't either.
It's more of a statement than a question. Can you hear me?
Is it on? Yeah.
I wrote a lot of things down while everybody was talking. This has been on my radar for 28 years. In 1994, my father was murdered. He was a victim of gun violence. I was 15 years old. I've thought about it for a long time. If you met me in 1995, a year after my father died, I'm a rule follower. I'm a law-abiding citizen. I was a freshman in college, and I did a survey, and I asked people at my school in Brooklyn how many people had been a victim of gun violence. almost every single person in my class had been a victim of gun violence or knew somebody who was. So if you spoke to me when I was 17 years old, my knee-jerk emotional reaction was, well, we need stronger gun laws. That's the answer. I follow the rules. Everybody's going to follow the rules. That's just the way life is. Time has gone on. I've gotten older. And 1999, I was 20 years old when Columbine happened. That's the first school mass shooting of my generation. I can tell you where I was. I can tell you how I remember it every April. So like I said, I spent a lot of time thinking about this, and I think there's a lot of things we need to talk about, and I think there's a lot of things we need to consider. One, my father was killed by an illegal gun. So I think one of the things that, by the way, everybody that spoke tonight, thank you, and you made a lot of excellent points. But I think we need to discuss illegal guns that come into this state and into this country, because that is part of our problem. And I think we make the mistake of using the word mental illness when we talk about these situations instead of the word mental health. I think it's very important that we check on the mental health of those that are perpetrating these crimes and the mental health of the people afterwards, as was said earlier. But a lot of times, the problem is a mental health issue, and a lot of times, in my opinion, we are not being a community, we're not taking care of each other, as we've said, and we're not checking in on people. And I think when we're really checking in on our children, on our communities, it's good for their mental health, it's good for our mental health. As was said earlier, there's different rules from state to state. The other thing that I've seen happen in 20 years personally and just observing, when I was a young girl and in my early 20s, we had many mental institutions, okay? I work in a hospital. I've been in a hospital for 18 years. I've been in and around the hospital my entire life. Mental health does not make money. So mental health does not get the care and attention that it needs. And oftentimes in the last 20 years, our jails have become the place where our mentally ill or the people with mental health issues have come. And we've relied on our jails for that. And our incarceration rates have been high. Like I said, this is more of a statement than a question. I think it's a multifaceted issue. And I really think we need to see how we can take care of each other, take care of our community, and also understand that it's mental health. Mental health is the word, not mental illness, and it's the way we're handling things in the healthcare community isn't going to help us, and that is a very important factor. So I just wanted to share my personal experience and how my view has changed in 28 years, and I realize it's not just a one-size-fits-all answer. You have to look at the whole picture, which I think we did acknowledge here tonight, and I just wanted to say that. So thank you again.
So we actually have a few online questions. So before you, Eddie, sorry, we're gonna jump one and one. So this one question from the online audience, it said, years ago, we had local volunteer neighborhood watch groups that provided extra eyes and ears in our communities that could assist law enforcement. I don't know if residents will step forward in this day and age, but do you think this is something that that could/should be reborn? I'm going to pass this question over to the officers.
That's an excellent question. First, I'm sorry for your loss. I know it's 28 years, but it's never get over it. So our deepest sympathies. All right. That's an excellent question. When I first became the commanding officer 2.5 years ago, I started a block watcher program in the neighborhood where we have volunteers for the community, and they can go around walking the neighborhood with the auxiliary officers and one officer, usually it was a community affairs officer, that will join them. We'll teach them techniques of what to see when they're walking around the streets. So that program, we did that 2 years ago. At first it started out like about anywhere from 5 to 10 people doing it. And then, gradually throughout the year, people start coming. I have no problems doing that again. If anybody wants to be part of it, please come see me directly. I will make sure it happens. But the only issue with that is that when you are going out there and you're looking, and you don't have to do it with us every day in a set time. You guys are my eyes and ears out there. You live in the community. I work in the community for about 10 to 12 hours a day, every day. all right? But that's only half the time. You guys live here 24/7. If you see something, please call us. All I ask is do not engage that individual. If you know your neighbor's going away for 2 weeks, there should be nobody wearing a phone company or electric company jacket trying to ring the doorbell. You know your neighbor's not there. So call 911. Call it in as a suspicious person. Say, hey, some guy's knocking on my neighbor's doorbell, but I know my neighbor's not home. He or she is not expecting anybody. You guys are my eyes and ears. You guys do that, I guarantee we will catch the bad guy. A perfect example, about 3 weeks ago, somebody did that. They called us in. The individual was trying to get into the door. She knew our neighbor went away for the weekend. We got there. We were able to stop him. There was no arrest made just because there was no crime committed. But we stopped that crime from committing, and that individual never came back. All right? In the 111 precinct, this is a great community. Most of my arrests are from outside people. People that know that you guys work 9 to 5 jobs. They know that you're gone for the middle of the day. They come from different parts of the city, mostly outside of Queens, and they come in and try to take your personal property. That's why I always tell everybody, lock your doors to keep what's yours. You don't know how many reports I see where somebody leaves the car door open, their wallet's gone the next day. Somebody leaves the back door open to the house, the kitchen's ransacked, the couch is ransacked, the living room's ransacked. So please, if you just lock your doors, it will lower crime, and these individuals that are people of opportunists will not have the opportunity to rob you or burglarize you and commit crimes in our neighborhood. But going back to the original question, if anybody wants to start up the block watcher program with me again, I'm more than willing to happen, and we could do it together. And I'll show you what to look for when you're out there in the street. Again, you can apply that 24/7 because you guys live in the neighborhood. You know your neighbors. You know down the block that Jimmy's going to graduate from high school. You know his friends. You guys know the neighborhood just as good, if not better, than my officers. So if you see something that's out of place, call 911. It is nothing that you think is nothing. Nothing too small for us. I want the calls. So that means my officer will be in the right area and we'll be able to catch these guys in act. Thank you.
I think that it's something that needs to be dealt with. Part of mine is a question and a statement also. One of the statements is that I read the newspaper a lot. And I really feel sorry for the police department because they arrest thousands and thousands of people, and thousands of them are released because of our laws. We have to work on changing our laws because no matter what the police do or anyone else does, until we deal with the laws that they're arresting these people for and not being able to release them, at least put them in. Put them in Rikers Island. Show them some of these videos. Let them realize what the people out here are thinking and talking about. Because they don't care. Most of the people with those, they don't care. They wouldn't shoot it if they cared. Grant you some of them are suffering. But the majority of them are not. The majority of them are just angry at whatever is going on. And guns, you know, I could get a gun today if I wanted it. I've never had one since Vietnam because of the reason I know the destruction they can do. And the thing of it is that the people are arrested and they're turned loose. We have to change our laws. Once we start that, I think that'll beginning the health issue, like Peter said. It's just we have to deal with that first. We can't, no matter what goes on, it's going to continue until our laws are changed. They have to be changed no matter what anybody says. Let the people go to their towns and they don't put the issue up to vote for. They put whatever they want up there. All the politicians, they're putting in what's in their mind, not what's in the people's mind. You go around and ask all these people, and I live in a different area than here. I live over in Flushing, and it's a different neighborhood. It's not like it's mostly apartments. So a lot of things different go on there than goes on around here. But the idea of it is that we have to pray. If the kids had more family structure growing up, a lot of this wouldn't be happening. And no matter where it's happening at, it's in the South, it's in the West, it's in the East, or in New York City. But we have to change our laws. And it has to be done sooner than later, because later is just thousands more people are going to be killed, including children. And that's our future.
Thank you. And as Bishop Franklin mentioned, we are coming into a very important election cycle, and one of the ways that we can get things changed is through our vote. That's probably our loudest voice. On the back page of on the resource sheet, there's information about how to reach the politicians. Give them a call. Let them know.
We the people. We have to. I think that's great what you said. We the people. The power lies with the people, and the power lies with our democracy, and our democracy is being threatened at the moment. So the only way we can preserve it is by that precious vote that everybody in this room, I don't think there's anybody who couldn't vote probably in this room, but we have to all agree on that. The right to vote, as you said, is key.
And I appreciate that, sir. Thank you very much. I want everybody to rest assured, and I give this my bottom of my heart, I give you this promise. The laws are the laws at this point. I don't care if I lock up someone up for burglary and they go out the next day. If they do it again, I'm going to lock them up. All right? I don't care if I have to lock them up 100 times. That's our job. My job is, the more priority is to make sure you're safe. And I give you my solemn word on that. So if they let them out, that's on the ADA's office, that's on the lawmakers, the law writers. But I promise you, as the police department, that we took an oath to protect each and every one of you, and we will do that. We've done it for 75 years, and we look forward to doing it again for the next 75 years. So please, rest assured. And to what you also mentioned, and I believe she mentioned on the screen, the power of vote. You guys don't realize the support that we have right now. You got Vicky Palladino, phenomenal. Linda Lee, phenomenal. Blow up the phones, call them, write them letters day in and day out. They will hear you if you speak. But if you sit here and just listen and do nothing, what's the saying? When good people do nothing, the bad guys win. So the power is in your hands, like the gentleman just said. You have to speak up. You have to write the letters. You have to tell. I know we're all busy. We all work jobs. We're busy, take care of our kids, our grandkids. But even that 5 minutes, when you think you have that 5 minutes for yourself, that's when you should pick up the phone and blow up the congressman, the assemblywoman's phones, and let them know, hey, we're not happy. The law's not right. Just do better. But the power is in your hands. Thank you.
Can I add one thing?
Yeah.
I think one of the other things is the power community. You know, there's a place like All Saints where all of you probably have a fairly shared set of values. And, you know, we grew up in a small neighborhood, mostly Roman Catholic, but we grew up in a small neighborhood.
So is this.
And we would, pardon me?
So is this.
Okay. We would run around, and if I was acting out, Mrs. DePinto would scold me just as much as my mom would scold Nina DePinto. And so what started to happen is this sense of what is the community value, not just my family value, but our community values. So emphasizing those community values, and as I said, giving kids possibility, and what you guys do, acknowledging the power and the humanity of those kids, it does more. I mean, yes, laws are important, but that kind of thing on a one-to-one basis is something that we can all do today. Sorry.
Okay, I have a question and a statement from the online audience. Most of the time, I'm not going to be naming the person that asked the question, but this person I'm sure wouldn't mind being named. It's from another Byrne brother, Bob. He says, hi. First, let me say a sincere thank you to the panelists and especially to the officers from New York's finest. I have taken a lot of notes tonight, and some words jump out as common threads. I'm just going to go to one for time. Fear, fear, and fear. Scripture mentions the notion of not being afraid 365 times, and he asks two questions, but I'm going to break them up. So first, this question is to the bishop specifically. Could addressing fear be the balm you and your fellow bishops seek? And on an even broader level, our society does not value life. And that's the end of that question.
Well, I think the word I would use at the moment is anxiety. This is a society that is filled with anxiety, and I think it's particularly with younger people. And it's partly, if I may just say, and we're live on the internet, it's partly the internet. I think it has created this world that feeds anxiety among the young. And so we must also think of monitoring the internet and what's happening on it, and how that has really become, we thought it was, this is a great agency of freedom and everybody could do all these things. But we realized that it's sowing great anxiety among our young people and anxiety about the future of our country. So that one of the things I think religion needs to address is how to cope with anxiety. And so one of the answers of religion is you turn your anxiety over to God. Those in the room who are believers believe that we do have this agency, God, who can intervene to really grab our anxiety and do something about it. But I think that is something that we must address as a people. And I think it's for young people, college age, graduate students, all down the line, this anxiety is sweeping. The number of suicides, enormous among young people. Everybody in the room, I think, knows this. That's not a political thing, because I think both people who are Republicans and Democrats are anxious about what the future is going to be.
If there are any questions from in the audience, you can take those now, and then we will go back to the online questions. So if you have a question, Dan, you'll go right up to the podium.
During the 1960s, during the era of urban, often racial violence, there was a national commission established, the Kerner Commission. I was just wondering if it's possible there's a need for a new national commission on this issue. And that's just one point. Another point is that there are a variety of social factors which are endemic in American society, which are related to violence, including the role of the frontier in American life, the role of migration, which is often traumatic. Now in New York City, we have migrants from Latin America through Texas who are coming here, and I'm sure that their experience may be part and parcel of this. And the general problem of mobility in American life, and whether the problem of the apparent limitation on upward social mobility in American life is transferring it into a kind of social frustration, which is producing occasional violence, although this has to be proven on an empirical basis. So that's all I want to say. Thank you.
I would guess, and I have to guess only, that you are right, that so much of what is happening is because the American dream is not what it was when we were coming up. It doesn't seem like it's really possible. It seems more that 1984 is here than the American dream. But economics is certainly a part of I think, this issue.
Well, I'm not referring only to economics. I'm referring to the general fabric of society. I'm sure senators and congressmen in Washington are knowledgeable about this and have their eyes on the pulse of the nation, and are interested in alleviating this. It isn't just a question. I don't think that politics is merely a question of producing and publishing legislation to improve society. You have to take a general look at the general welfare and nature and being and needs of the people and the variety of racial, ethnic, and power, and a variety of other social combinations here. That's all I have to say.
Thank you very much.
It's interesting because what you bring up is the idea of this myth of what America was. And those myths can be very empowering for children to understand to understand their world, but then the myth has to confront what is reality, and that's very difficult. And to the bishop's comment about social media, I talk to so many kids who are frustrated. I talked to a 7-year-old who was really upset because he didn't have a six-pack and he was trying not to eat and doing all this stuff. And I was like, dude, you can't have a six-pack at 7, but there was this whole image, these unrealistic images that these young people are being presented that there is no way that they can have. And one of the things I try to do is live in what is rather than what if. But I think that it is a pernicious kind of thing because the validation is coming from yet another kind of myth. And that's very, very difficult for young people.
I just want to say that perhaps what is happening is that we're allowing the children to grow up too quickly. So at 7, they think that they're grown, instead of saying, well, this is what grown-ups would do. Maybe when you're grown, you'd have this privilege and so forth. But we don't correct them when they ask us and let them know that there's a stage you go through before you get there.
I think a lot of problems here, a lot of issues here with our community. A lot of issues with our community is that children don't have a timeout. Let me explain. When I was growing up, I didn't have an iPad. I went to school. Was I bullied? Absolutely. Did I pick on other kids? Absolutely. But after that happened, when you were done with school, you went home. It was done. It was quiet. You were home, your mom and dad loved you no matter what, and that was it. Our children today, our kids today, when they get bullied at school, it doesn't stop when the bell rings. They go home and they look at their iPad, and the iPad is right in front of them too now. It's 24/7. These kids don't have a break, and they're not built the way we were built. All right? I think I have tough skins. I've been called a lot of names, especially since I became a cop on this job. I've been called a lot of nasty names, but it doesn't let me bother me. But if you do that to one of our young kids in this generation today, they're not going to be able to handle it. And that's why suicides are so up. That's why they don't have an outlet. They don't have a break. Technology is great in a lot of ways, but it shouldn't be the answer to a 10-year-old because he's bored. He's crying. I have a son, 9 years old. I love my boy. He loves the iPad. He's allowed to use it 1 day a week for 1 hour. That is it. The rest of the time, he's out there. I'm putting him in every sport I can. He's out there. He's out of the house just like I was. It's different, from when I was out. My parents said, go out, come back at 9. Okay, Mom. I can't do that with him. I'll never see him again. This guy is like, but the technology is great, but we got to be careful, especially at a young age of 7, 8, 9 years old. They can't be on it all the time. And that becomes, the next question is, well, what's the mom and dad doing? Luckily in this community, they have 2 parents. One's working, one's home with the kids, or both working, and then you have grandma doing it. Unfortunately, if you go to other parts of the city, they don't have that option. The mom's a single parent, has 3 kids. The 7-year-old brother is raising the 4-year-old brother. So it's tough. And these are a lot of questions that are real questions. This is getting into all the issues. All right? I can't watch the kids, but the first time when somebody says no to a 17-year-old kid on the street, it's probably my officers. And then there's a physical confrontation in my suit. And everybody's looking at the officer. Why is he doing that to a 17-year-old kid? But when I was 17, if I talked back to a cop and a cop brought me home to my mom, I begged the cop, take me to jail. Don't take me back to my mom's house or my dad. Like, no. It was like, but my mom would say, thank you, officer, I'll take care of it. And I'll be like, oh shit. Excuse my language. Sorry, Paul. But that is what it comes down to. So it comes to this are all serious questions that we need to ask each other. All right? We may be lucky in this community to have family and our grandparents and our uncles and aunts that help raise our children. Like he says, it takes a village to raise your child. It takes all of us. A lot of other communities don't. And maybe that's why they turn to gangs. That's why they turn to gun violence. Because they're tired of getting picked on and called names day in and day out and going home and seeing them get embarrassed on the computer, on technology. So we have to do better as a society and as a family. Because that's what we all are. It doesn't matter what color we are. It doesn't matter how we look. We are all family. We all bleed red. if you cut us. We have to do better. Thank you.
Oh, I wonder if part of the issue in the whole "it takes a village" thing, which is really, I really believe in. It's not just something to embroider and put on the wall. I don't know if there's less trust in the world than there was at one point, but where you live in such a litigious society, again, we're back to the word fear. People are a bit afraid to speak up to other people's children. And I don't know if there's a way that we can change that culture, but it probably starts young.
I remember when I was in first grade, I came home and I said, Mrs. Lotto, who was my teacher, is mad at me. And the question was, well, what did you do?
Yeah.
Right? It was like the people in authority, they acknowledge that authority instead of, now if you know the musical Matilda, it's like, the teacher gave them a C, well, we got to get you another teacher. Right? So it was a structure, it was a hierarchy, and we as kids knew where we fit in it, and we didn't have a lot of power, but we had protection, and we had food, and we had a community around us. And the thing about kids is, if you give them an expectation, they generally try to meet it. And I think that's the thing that's really important, that we need to let young people know that they're expected to do well. You're expected to do this. Yeah.
Let me piggyback a little bit on what you said, Father Larry. And I don't think half of us know our neighbors. And because we don't know our neighbors and we don't speak to our neighbors and we're not neighborly, then the neighbor does not want to interfere. Fortunately, I'm not one of those neighbors, because I'm going to say, and where's your parent? Let me walk with you to your home or whatever. But today, people curse each other out versus trying to get to know and know that someone is helping them to look out for their child.
We have, Diana, do we have one on?
We have online questions, yes.
And we have one and we have Stella, so I think it's online's turn, and then we'll go to Stella.
All right, so we're going to do the second half of Bob's question here. It is to the entire panel, so whoever thinks they have the best answer first, please jump in. How do we install the value of life on a broad society level? Because until that happens, guns are just the tools, no different than anything else that can be used to kill.
Well, I think that obviously the people who make their living in religion here would say that the religion is important for society, I think. I mean, understanding that there is a God, however we understand that God, and that God cares about us, and that God loves us. I mean, it's been a fundamental part, I think, of our civilization. And so just to sort of X out that understanding, I think is a decline. And yet we look at our church, the Episcopal Church, is declining. We would be lying to you if we didn't say that it's declining. Why is that going on? Why do people want to live their lives? I think I preached about this when I came here in April. I had a brother-in-law who died without any faith at all. None. And I had to do the funeral. And that was the hardest service I've ever done in my life. I mean, what do you do? What do you say in a situation like that? So that I think we have to sort of come to the end of this saying something about religion, that religion should not be excluded from this conversation that we're having tonight. That's why it's appropriate that it's happening in the church.
I think it's very important, and I think that those of us who make our living in play, but there is an analogy, because through play, children become themselves. They discover who they are. They get to try on identities. They get to see, oh, that worked, that fit, that didn't. I mean, you see kids playing dress up and all that time. But really, it does come down to a kind of faith, which is something you can't see, but you hope for. And
yes.
The liturgy says ensure certain hope of the resurrection.
Exactly.
It doesn't guarantee us that, but we live in that faith, and we live in the faith that we can become something, and that faith then drives us to action, and that can be positive action.
That's right.
And all of this shows, everything we've been talking about in the last 15, 20 minutes, shows that there is something bigger than just me. Right. This is all about something larger than just ego or id, is something larger than myself. I am part of something bigger than just Larry. And that's it's easy to see in a family structure. I'm part of the Byrne family, and that insane group of people that goes back, has very noisy Christmas dinners and has a wonderful time. But being aware that we're part of something bigger, and being aware that we are as a church part of something bigger. Bishop was talking about the Lambeth Conference. We're part of a worldwide Anglican communion. This is not about Bayside or Long Island or New York or the United States. It's the whole world and more. And we if you ever went to camp in the last 50, 60 years, you probably sang, "He's got the whole world in his hands," right? And he does. Mm-hmm. Right. And if we begin to acknowledge that and not poo-poo it, then I think that might help begin to ease some of the anxiety. It might help us to breathe deeply a little bit. So.
Don't forget stillness.
Our speaker on Zoom
Oh.
actually has something.
Okay.
Hi.
Yeah. Hi, Michelle.
Hi. Thank you. I just wanted to go back to when we were talking about first, to your first parishioner, I want to express my condolences for the loss of her. And thank you for coming here tonight and sharing that with us. It means so much. And one of the things that I noticed in the federal bill that was passed is I think our politicians are starting to listen to us, because this wasn't just about gun regulations that were in there. There was funding that was set aside for mental health. And there was also funding set aside for our community programs. And I think we can all agree it's not just a one-pronged approach. We do have to do the work in our community, do the work with the people who are experiencing mental health issues. And again, and I know I said it earlier, but let your voices be heard. And I think the only reason that bill was passed was because those provisions were put in. And it was very important to a lot of the people who supported this bill. So they're hearing you. So what's being said here tonight is starting to really resonate. And I just encourage all of you to continue to do that, because it's not just a one-pronged approach. We do have to be, like I say, in our communities, dealing with our people who do have mental health issues, and doing the legislative work also. But I thought it was really important to highlight that I do not think that bill would have passed without those provisions. And I'm so glad that that's being expressed here tonight.
Thank you very much. I think we have time for one more question. Stella had her hand up. If you would come to the podium to... Oh, and Jack, I didn't see your hand, but you can go after Stella and you'll be our...
There is also one more online question. I had this question for a while.
Okay, Stella, online, Jack, and we have to wrap up.
First, I wanted to say, Chris, I loved your idea that with the help of parents, toys have part of the development of a child. The toys themselves have to be, they're toys. They're not the reason why children become violent. They're not the reason why children grow up to be adults who become violent. I feel that that's a really important thing, that parents need to be more present in their children's lives, and they need to monitor what they're doing and be taught in the home to respect police officers. I, for one, would want to be a cop and not a robber. I mean, my little brother was the robber, but that was how we were brought up. We respect the flag, we respect the authority of a police officer. I was wondering, you have these programs for children, and not every teenager is on the road to becoming a criminal. But these workshops for children, to keep them off the streets, to give them something to do instead of just hanging out. Do you have workshops for parents? I mean, my parents are all grown. I mean, my children are all grown. But it would probably help parents if they had a place to go, that they were wondering, my goodness, you know, my child is watching all these violent videos. Is there something to that? Red flags for them to look at their own kids. Because you know what, I always felt that when something hits you wrong in your stomach, you don't ignore it. And a lot of parents, I feel, do that because it wouldn't be their children. And that's sad, because everybody needs help. But I was just wondering if there are workshops for parents, and maybe you could give the churches a list of workshops for kids, for parents, and we could put them on our website, or we could post them for Sunday mornings. You know, the churches are a good avenue for communication. I think we could work hand in hand. That's all.
Good idea.
Guys, that's a great idea. Oh, that's a great idea. Thank you, Miss. Honestly, no, we don't. But that's something that I will bring to my supervisors. That's a great idea. But what I can tell you is that if a parent has an issue with a child or just needs to talk, just come to the precinct. I have phenomenal officers and especially units. So I have a domestic violence officers where they deal with, you know, trauma in the family. It doesn't have to be family trauma though. If you have a question, you're like, hey, my kid's watching this, should I be worried? I might not have the answer, but I will guarantee I will do everything I can to get you the best answer to it. So please, don't feel like you're alone. Again, you know, it's not just a saying, it takes a village to raise the whole family, all the kids. Come to the precinct, express your concerns about your child, and just maybe introduce him to an officer. Maybe he's on the phone too much or the iPad too much, and he's watching some videos that you deem that a child, 13, 14-year-old, should not be watching at his age. Let's give him another outlet. Have him talk to somebody else. Listen, you know how you were growing up, and your mom and dad sit you down, or your dad goes, hey, so we have that talk, and you're like, oh man, and it's like, this guy, you know, you guys remember that conversation? I'm sure most of you do. But maybe you bring him to an officer, have him talk to him, or just get somebody else's opinion of accountability, somebody in authority. Talk to him. Then like, oh, my mom and dad know what they're talking about. This guy's saying the same thing. He's a police officer. Just to get another point of view, so you don't have to feel awkward talking to your child or feel like you're the only one doing it, because you're not. That's what we're here for. We'll help you any way we can. We don't have any set programs, but that's something I'll bring up to my bosses and see if I can get the ball rolling on that. Most of my programs are to children, you know, the teens, trying to make sure they go in the right path, not the wrong one. But thank you for bringing me that idea. It's a great idea, and I will bring it to my supervisors.
Okay, we have an online, and we have Jack, and then we're going to have to wrap up.
You mind if I just...
Oh, wait, Officer Gallardo.
Mike, you're good.
Oh, okay. I just wanted to add one thing, too, what Captain Portalatin stated, too. A lot of times, I have 3 children myself. I have a 12, 9, and 6-year-old. And obviously, they have devices as well, too. And if there's something on that I don't like, or I think it's just time to turn the devices off, I turn my router off. No more Wi-Fi. Guess what? No Wi-Fi, the devices don't work. And it's an easy solution. You know, I'm just throwing it out there. It was just some other thing I wanted to add to that.
You're the dad.
Yeah. Turn it off. Turn the Wi-Fi off.
You win.
Okay, so this question was presented from our online audience. There is another important statement after this, so if we do have a minute, I will ask it. If not, I will be addressing it after the service of the town hall. But this question is, again, most likely for the officers, but if anyone else wants to step in, please feel free to do so. Is there a way that a revised stop, question, and frisk policy structured to protect citizens' rights to be implemented in our law enforcement crime prevention options?
I'm a big component for stop, question, and frisk. That was around when I was a cop 20 years ago. And you don't know how many people, unfortunately, do carry guns and knives and illegal drugs. And that tool is a great tool for New York City police officers. I understand that it might have been abused by certain officers throughout the department in the years past. I understand that. I never did that. I know numerous officers that use that tool correctly. That tool is still in effect. We do still stop people with reasonable suspicion. What we've done since that has come out, since we have said that some certain officers did not do it right, is we trained 90% of the department. All right, we have the new officers coming out of the academy being trained the right way and how to use it. That is not a tool. I will tell you straight out. It's not a tool to say I can stop any black man or any Hispanic man. I have never done that in my career. That was a tool that was used based on crime, location, and the reason why I always explained to the individual I did. All right? So that tool was still in effect. I still personally use it. My officers use it, and the officers in my command use it the right way. So I want to rest assured that that is still a tool that the police department uses, and it has been doing and being used the correct way. It's not a racial thing. It's not a racial stop thing, anything like that. If we believe somebody's stopping a crime, we can articulate and explain to the individual why they're being stopped. I have done it numerous times throughout my career. I will continue doing it until I retire, and that is the way that tool is used by the police department correctly.
Okay, and Jack, you're up.
Okay. This goes to everybody. Do you think the public has a rather blasé attitude about crime in general? I've been in this community for 50 years, and I've seen Bell Boulevard especially change. I'm going to make a statement. After 2 police officers were killed here years ago, all of a sudden, everything on Bell Boulevard changed. It used to be Booze Boulevard. But now I'm seeing the public seems to have a very blasé attitude about anything that goes on. I witness it every day, and most people in the community know because I'm up and down the boulevard helping the merchants all the time. And I'm just questioning, do they have a rather, I don't care attitude? That's what goes through my mind when I deal with this every day.
Bell Boulevard has changed. When I was 20, 21, I used to go to Bell Boulevard, hang out, have a good time. But there was always a sign of respect when we saw an officer. We didn't do stupid things. I didn't live here in Bayside, never lived in Bayside once. I grew up in Maspeth in the 104 precinct, and I moved to Long Island in Oceanside when I was 13. My parents moved me there. I know for a fact, you're right, it has changed, and the attitude is completely a lack of respect to certain of my officers. But that's not the community itself, all right? The people that live here have a sense of respect. They do what they do, they go there to have fun, and then they go home. The issues I'm having, crime-wise, is people from outside the community. So people coming from Queens South in Jamaica. I got guys coming from Long Island and Hempstead. I got guys coming from the Bronx and Brooklyn. Bell Boulevard is a great place. It's a great place to hang out. A lot of bars, a lot of different musics, a lot of different activities to do. Everybody in the city knows that. And we get a lot of outside people to come out here to do it and come hang out. Unfortunately, some of those people, like you said, lack the respect. A, they don't live in the community, so they don't really care. And B, they get too intoxicated, they just want to go home and cause a scene, whatever the case might be. All right, but the people that live here, they love the community here, they respect the community here, and they want to keep it clean and have a good time and just go home. So that, to answer your question, so it's yes and no, but it's not the community itself. Bayside itself is not changing. It's a great community. We love the support. We love you guys. When we say hi to my officers, it means the world to them. We have a lot of outside people trying to diminish what we have here. I, for one, has not allowed that to happen. Every time there's a crime there, my detectives, my officers respond, we make their arrests, and we keep them moving. Just recently, about 2 weeks ago, this past Monday, or a week from this past Monday, I sat down with all the bar owners. We have a flyer now. If you look at Bourbon Street, if you look at Hennessy's, if you look at OTP, they have a sign now that says exactly what I asked them to do. Is No funny packs, no bags on your shoulder. You're going to be dressed a certain way. You're going to address to the code. There's no drugs allowed in the bar. If you do violate any of these calls, I'm going to call 911, and you give up the right to be searched because you're in my private residence. So what the bar's owners agree with you. They have brought this to my attention, and we're trying to make Bell Boulevard where people just go and have a good time and not cause any problems. So that's what we're doing, and it has been working. I haven't taken any crime in the last 2 weeks at Bell Boulevard. So I understand your concern, but we're making it the right way again. Well, it's a safe.
We realize that it's straightened out. I know most of the merchants on Bell Boulevard, and they said they don't have the problems we had way back when.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yes, because the community and the police department are working together to make sure that happens. But thank you.
So again, it's something that's bigger than the individual. That's our recurring theme, the community working together to uphold a certain way of being, and that's what we need. Diana, we have one more?
Yes, we do have one more. So there has been a lot of discussion about law enforcement tonight. Obviously, thank you. This question comes from someone online, and I told them that if they want to continue this conversation, they can reach out specifically. But the person says, it occurs to me that the expectation to respect authority seems logical for a predominantly Caucasian audience, but does not address the fear that racial bias that many Americans have grown up with. For example, this person had a coworker who was pulled over in his driveway on his way home from work late at night for driving a nice car in a neighborhood while being black, and we just want to. The question really, this is a statement, but I can form the question from this, is basically, how do we address this disparity in relationship to authorities in terms of crime prevention?
That's an excellent question. And listen, if you're not a cop, you really don't understand. And I'm going to try to explain to everybody here in the audience. This is Bayside. This is a predominantly white neighborhood that I work in, all right? We have Asians, but hardly any Hispanic live here, hardly any black live here. Now, I'm telling you from experience, as a cop, I worked in Corona in the 110 precinct. That is the 90% Hispanic. When I was a cop there, if I saw a white guy walking in the backyard of somebody's house, I would ask that guy what to do. Because I know for a fact that white guy did not live there. There's a Hispanic community. That is not being racial. That is knowing my surroundings. That is knowing where I know who lives in my neighborhood. All right? Bayside is a mostly white and a little bit of Asians that we have that live in the area. If I see a Hispanic male, now keep in mind, you can't play the race card with me. I'm a Hispanic male. Right? So if I see a Hispanic male go into a backyard, I'm going to stop that guy. It's not because he's Hispanic solely. It's because I know for a fact, this is my neighborhood. I work here for 2.5 years. That Hispanic guy does not live in that neighborhood. And all I'm doing is saying, hey, sir, how can I help you? Are you lost? Do you live here? I didn't accuse him of any crime. I didn't put my hands on him. I didn't throw him on the floor. I didn't start beating him. Not the stuff you see on TV and the news and all that nonsense. Cops do not do that. But we have a right to ask. And that's a tough question to ask somebody that you don't know. And that person might be that person's cousin that I don't know. And yes, he might get offended. And the family might come out and yell at me. But if I don't do that, and that guy doesn't live there, and next thing you know, your house is burglarized. Your $10,000 that you saved up your whole life is gone. Whose fault is that? That falls on me. So it's a double-edged sword where the community wants us to police a certain way, but you can't, because it's not racial profiling. It's not. I have done it. I have asked certain people, what's up, big guy, you live here? Just a simple question. And you know what? That guy might live there. And he's like, no, sir, I live here. You know what? I apologize, sir. I didn't know you live here. My name is John. Get home safe. Enjoy the rest of your night. That is it. But people are so sensitive, and they take it personal. They think, yo, you stopped me because I'm Hispanic? Well, sir, it's just a white neighborhood. I just want to make sure you live here. It's not because you're a Hispanic guy. No, I'm just making sure that the neighborhood is safe. That's what it is. But people look at it, and it's like, no, he did it because he's Hispanic. No, there's other factors involved. If this was a mixed community where we had Hispanic and blacks and whites and Asians all living together, I wouldn't do that because it'd be like it could be anybody. But this is not that type of neighborhood. And unfortunately, it does happen. Because you know what? I'm not going to stand here and say that the NYPD is perfect. There is some bad apples here. But I promise you, there's no bad apples in the 111 precinct. And I promise you, in every command I worked in the 110, the 73, the 103, there were no bad apples there. There were guys just trying to do their job and try to make the community safe. All right? I have 5 complaints against me. 5 legal complaints against me. They found me innocent in all 5 of them because I was just doing my job. And it was never about force. It was never about stealing. Yeah, I stop people. That is my job. That's what you want us to do. You want us to stop an individual who we believe does not belong here. Because if I don't do that, who's going to? Especially when you're sleeping or you're on way of vacation. We have to get past that color thing. I look at all of you right now, you're all family. I don't care what color you are. I really don't. But I know for a fact, if you're walking on 215th Street and Northern Boulevard, I have taken robberies. And then the people from the complaints that have told me is a male black. And I said, really? Okay, male black in 215 and Northern, right? There's nobody that lives there that's a male black. So if I see a male black there, I'm going to stop that individual. I say, hey, how you doing, sir? Can I help you? There's nothing wrong. I'm in my legal right to do that. If they get offended, I'm sorry. And I'll explain to them. Sir, the reason why you're being stopped, you're going to your girlfriend's house, that's great. The reason why you're being stopped, sir, is because I'm getting robbed. A lot of robberies here. Is a male black, about 5'10". I'm sorry, you fit the description. I'm just making sure it's not you. I'm making sure you're okay, because I don't want you to get robbed. That's the truth. This thing where people get stopped because of the color, I don't believe it. Sir, Bishop, you said when you were younger, you saw a guy get shot trying to vote, right?
Yes, I did.
Yes. What year was that?
1956.
So you're telling me right now, from 1956 to 2022, we haven't evolved as a society? I don't believe that. I know we're good. I know the majority, 90% of the people in this world are good people that don't judge on color. Yeah, is there still white supremacists out there? Absolutely. Are there still racist assholes out there? Excuse my language. Yes, absolutely. Absolutely there are. But I'm telling you, in the Blue Police Department, we have over 35,000 members, maybe 5-10 at bad apples. And if they do stuff like that, I promise you they will be reported, they will be charged and fired. Because we don't accept that. We are the best police department in the world because we are so different. We have black, white, Spanish, Asian, Indian. We got Jamaican. We got all different kinds of cultures and personalities in here. I have made so many friends.
Yeah.
Two of our speakers have to get the 956. I'm sorry. Sorry, I'll give them a train ride. But just know that we're not doing racial profiling. That we have come so much farther as a society.
So we appreciate, I think I can speak for all of us gathered, we appreciate how hard your job is and what you do, and we appreciate the fact that you do it well and that you do it colorblind.
Yes. We'll make it 9:59, I think, but we can't believe it.
Before I ask Deacon Marjorie to give us the benediction for the evening, I just want to make sure that I say not a word but several paragraphs of thanks to Stephanie Hornback, Teddy Byrne, and Diana Gilday. Without their tireless efforts, this would not have happened tonight. We will continue the conversation. Exactly how that's going to work, I'm not sure. We're going to keep praying. We're going to keep talking. We're going to keep loving the questions. And now, Deacon Marjorie, if you would send us off with a closing prayer, please.
Let us pray. Grant us prudence in proportion to our power, wisdom in proportion to our signs, humanness in proportion to our wealth and might, and bless our earnest will to help all races and peoples to travel in fellowship with us along the road to justice, liberty, and lasting peace. But grant us above all to see that our ways are not necessarily your ways, that we cannot fully penetrate the mystery of your design. And so, Lord, I ask you to dismiss us from this place, but not from your presence. Send us home to homes that are filled with love and keep us safe. Amen.
Amen. Amen. Thank you all again very much. Go in peace. Be the bomb in Gilead.
So I'm going to get on with it.
I think I'll have to charge your brother.